share his thoughts with you at this time. Congressman Sherman.
Thank you, Rob. Hello, I'm Brad Sherman from California. I've served in the House for over 20 years. Recent events require members of the House of Representatives to consider whether President Donald J. Trump should be impeached. This matter needs to be analyzed in terms of preserving constitutional rule of law, not on the basis of partisanship. And I associate myself with Al Green's comments on that very point. This is a sad day for our country. Our Constitution and democracy require that our leaders be held accountable to the rule of law. I'm startled by the similarities to Watergate. In 1972, the crime was stealing files from the headquarters of the Democratic National Committee. Back then, files were in manila folders, and in order to steal them, you had to commit traditional burglary. The files themselves are not known to have had any great importance. The crime was a third-rate burglary. Richard M. Nixon was required to resign not for the crime, but for the cover-up, obstruction of justice. He was not formally impeached by the full House, but the Judiciary Committee had approved articles of impeachment by significant bipartisan votes, and he chose to resign. In 2016, files were stolen from the headquarters of the Democratic National Committee. Today, files are not in manila folders. Rather, they are on electronic hard drives, and they can be stolen through cyber burglary. The stolen files may not turn out to be that important. The crime of stealing them appears to have been done first and foremost by Russian citizens immune from American justice. So it doesn't look like it's going to be the crime. It's the cover-up, obstruction of justice. What matters most is whether high crimes and misdemeanors will be shown by the evidence to reach the appropriate standard of proof. But before we get to that comment, there are some ancillary issues that will affect whether we should vote to impeach. These include how serious is the wrongdoing, how relevant is it to the office of President of the United States, does it constitute a threat to our constitutional order, and is impeachment in the national interest? As to that last point, I'll point out that I served with Mike Pence in this Congress for 12 years. You served with him for 8 years. I disagree with Mike Pence at least as much as I disagree with Donald Trump on public policy. However, impeachment may be necessary to ensure competent government that respects the Constitution and the rule of law, even if it gives us a president that is effective and dedicated to regressive policies. Now let's review the procedures that would apply in the House of Representatives. As Al pointed out, any member can introduce articles of impeachment. One would hope that upon such presentation, they would be referred to the Judiciary Committee, which would begin immediate and serious action. However, particularly if that action does not occur, and frankly at this stage I would not expect it, any member can make a privileged motion on the floor of the House that the articles of impeachment be considered immediately. If that motion is made, it has to be considered within 2 legislative days. One would expect House leadership to introduce a motion to table the articles. Tabling the articles basically ignores them, prevents a vote on them, prevents debate of them. So members who vote for a motion to table would have to explain to their constituents why, knowing that the Judiciary Committee was failing to act in an appropriate manner. They voted to prevent even a debate on the issue of impeachment. If there is a motion to table, and if that motion succeeds, any member can make a privileged resolution the very next day, starting again the 2-day process. Now let's consider whether high crimes and misdemeanors have been established by the evidence at hand, sufficient to meet the burden of proof. What is that burden of proof? It is not specified in the Constitution. However, as Al pointed out, an impeachment proceeding is one where the House, in effect, indicts a judicial or executive officer, and that triggers a trial in the Senate. In our criminal system, an indictment is issued usually by a grand jury upon the showing of probable cause. That is one of the lowest standards of evidentiary proof. It is way below beyond a reasonable doubt. So the House, if it fulfills its function, should send articles of impeachment for trial to the Senate, so long as there is probable cause to believe that there are high crimes and misdemeanors that have been committed. So what are high crimes and misdemeanors? On October 29th, 2015, the Congressional Research Service issued a report on impeachment and removal. They were able to do this in a slow and scholarly manner long before anyone was talking about impeachment in the United States Congress. Copies of that report are available on the side table. In that report, they note at page 9 that high crimes and misdemeanors do not require a showing of the violation of any particular criminal statute. They state, many of the impeachments approved by the House of Representatives have included conduct that did not involve criminal activity. Less than a third have specifically invoked a criminal statute or even used the term crime. It goes on to point out that there have been cases where judges have been impeached and removed for intoxication on the bench. And of course, the articles against Richard Nixon that were approved by the Judiciary Committee do not mention a single criminal statute. That being said, knowing my colleagues, they will hear the term high crimes and misdemeanors and say, let's look for the crime in the criminal penal statutes of the United States. We have, so the issue is the behavior, particularly that that has been indicated by the President's own statements on the record, combined with the behavior reported in the New York Times, that it appears that Director Comey will be confirming. He has issued a statement that seems to confirm everything in that story. Does that behavior constitute obstruction of justice? Now, CRS issued a report on May 16, of this year that looked at the two most common obstruction of justice statutes and indicates that they may not apply. The first, section 1510, deals with bribery, which may or may not be relevant. The other, section 1505, deals with obstructing justice in a proceeding before an administrative agency or the United States Congress. And it cites two cases that indicate that that does not apply to an FBI investigation. So I've been in touch with Ben Harrington, the author of that short but important article, and I have requested that CRS issue another report, this time analyzing a different federal code section, namely 18 U.S.C. 1512b3, which I believe that report will show that it is directly applicable to the behavior of Donald Trump. Now, most of section 1512 is focused on witness tampering and witness obstruction, because let's face it, that's the normal circumstance. Most criminals could never dream of obstructing or intimidating the FBI. They think the statutes tend to focus on obstruction of witnesses. But section 1512b3, copies of which are at the side table, go through the clearly apply. And this is the code section. Whoever by intimidation, threats, or corruptly persuades. Corruptly persuades is simply inappropriately tries to influence. Any person or engages in misleading conduct toward another person. I think that standard is met. It is clear from the cases that another person could be Director Comey. He is a person. With intent to hinder, delay, or prevent the communication of any to a law enforcement officer. Well, how do FBI investigations work, and how do they trigger prosecution? The FBI does an investigation and communicates its recommendation for prosecution to the Justice Department. The Attorney General is the chief law enforcement officer of this country, and those who work under him are law enforcement officers. So the question before us is whether the president, through threats, intimidation, or corruptly persuades, sought to prevent Mr. Comey from communicating that file to the Justice Department. I think the evidence will show that that is the case. I should point out that just a year ago, on May 9th, 2016, in U.S. versus Hawkins, the court held that this very section, 1512b3, was violated by a wrongful communication to an FBI agent. So while other statutes may not apply to FBI investigations, this one has been held to do so. So that is where things stand now. I think we all look forward to tomorrow's testimony. I expect to offer articles of impeachment, not this week, but expeditiously. And look forward to working with Al Green and staying in touch with him and with others. But I think that we will be dealing with impeachment resolutions in this Congress this year.
I will get to your questions in just a second. Just one additional commentary, if I may. In reviewing all of this, there is much to be said about applicable law. But there is little to be said about the indisputable facts, which are that the president fired the FBI director, and he did so because of the Russian thing that he said was made up, and has gone on to say that it's a witch hunt. My point that I'm making is this. I am of the opinion that obstruction of justice has already occurred. I will continue to work with my articles. Mr. Sherman is working with his articles. We may combine them. But the important takeaway from our being here together is this. You now have two members who are willing to come forward and say that they're looking at articles of impeachment. You have two members who are reviewing this. Now, there are others, I am sure, that are discussing this, and there are others who may be doing things that I'm not aware of. But when I have talked to the press has always wanted to know where are the rest of the members of the House? And I consistently say, I don't poll them, I don't lobby them. Mr. Sherman was kind enough to call me. He expressed concerns about my safety, and then we had an opportunity to talk about this. So the point is, again, you have two members who are now standing before you talking about articles of impeachment. Each member reserves the right to file the articles in the time and space that each member believes appropriate. I see this as a question of conscience for all of us. And I am honored to have Mr. Sherman here to give the recitation that he's given as it relates to the articles that he is considering. With this said, we welcome questions, and I'll just start with the person who's nearest me, and then go to a person who's not near, and then near and not near, okay, not so close. All right, yes.
Congressman, you've spoken several times about how you are drafting articles, have drafted articles. I mean, can you be a little bit more explicit on where you are in that process? And then if you're using the plural term articles, how many articles and exactly what are they alleging?
Thank you. The absolute article that will be available is the one on obstruction of justice, as it relates to the firing of Mr. Comey. That will be there without question. There are others that I am reviewing, and I do have articles that have been drafted. I am in the review state, as I indicated to you earlier, and I'll take my time in doing that, as Mr. Sherman will with his articles. But I also want you to know this. It's a bottom-up process, impeachment, not top-down, meaning the people have to weigh in. And when the people weigh in, they will allow their will to be reflected through their representatives in Congress. I am still looking to the people to weigh in. And I have no acid test that I can announce that will let you know when my articles will be filed. The important thing is that you have two members of Congress, both of whom are drafting or have drafted, to a certain extent, articles of impeachment, and who do plan to go forward. Mr. Sherman has been very adamant. He plans to go forward. I plan to go forward as well. Mr. Sherman.
I've drafted only one article of impeachment. It deals with obstruction of justice. It is remarkably similar to Article 1, adopted by the House Judiciary Committee in 1974 by a vote of 27-11 with bipartisan support. And currently, that is with Ledge Counsel, and we expect it to be ready fairly soon.
The lady.
Thank you. Director Comey has just released his opening statement for tomorrow's testimony. I was wondering if either one of you had had an opportunity to look at that yet, and if you had, if that clarifies or confirms your thinking on drafting those articles.
I regret to say that I have not. On the way in, a reporter called it to my attention. I was on the floor voting, and my understanding is that this is fresh off the press. So I have not had an opportunity to peruse it. I will peruse it and will probably give my commentary on it at a later time. So without having perused it, I would not want to give commentary. The gentleman who's next to the lady, and then we'll come up to the lady to my right.
Okay, Mr. Sherman, you said that you'll offer these articles expeditiously. Are you just simply waiting for Ledge Counsel to review this and get it back to you? Or what's your thinking? And this kind of also can go to you too, Mr. Green. You said it's not a dash to the finish line, excuse me. But Leader Pelosi said that she really couldn't get behind an impeachment effort yet until the facts really take her there. Are you guys still looking for more facts to come out before you can, move these articles forward?
I've concluded that the president has already committed an impeachable act. And what I'm doing is not about the Democrats or any Democrat. It's about democracy. What I'm doing is not about the Republicans. It's about the Republic. So this is driven by conscience. It's driven by a belief that no one is above the law. And I can only say to you, I will do this after having given the public an opportunity to weigh in. And I don't have an acid test that I can call to your attention as to when that will occur. But you will be made aware of it, and you have my assurance that there will be articles of impeachment filed. Now, if someone else does it and they do it such that I believe what has been done is appropriate, then there will be no need for me to file. This is not something that I'm doing because I want to be the first. It's something that I'm doing because it has to be done regardless as to who's the first.
We're working with Ledge Counsel. I would expect to file, they're trying, I'll use the term expeditiously, and I'll say I think that term involves weeks rather than months. But exactly what strategy to use to gain support is something that needs to be worked out. And if I feel that it will work better if I do it on a Thursday than a Wednesday, I'll do it on a Thursday rather than a Wednesday.
And I would add this. I take the position that this is of such a magnitude that whether anyone else votes with me, it's nice and it's important, but I know that there will be at least one vote to impeach the president, and I will cast that vote. I am convinced that given Mr. Sherman's recitation, that he is likely to be a person to cast a similar vote. But really, this is not about trying to make sure the Republicans or the Democrats are in lockstep. I've not lobbied anybody. I'm not going to lobby anybody. People are aware of what my position is, and they can give their commentary. I respect all of them and whatever they say, and I have no response to share with reference to the commentary that others might make. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, Congressman Green, are you holding back right now in part because of the threats against you, that it makes you more of a target?
Absolutely not. Since I announced, I have said consistently the same things that I have said today. One, that I believe the president has obstructed justice. Two, that the public has to weigh in because this is not a top-down, it's a bottom-up process. And three, that it's a question of conscience for all members of Congress to consider. I do, however, say this on the question of the threats. No amount of intimidation will deter me. It may enhance my resolve to go forward. It will not diminish my resolve to continue. I will do what I have said, and I will also say this. What was said was very ugly. And I am blessed to have resources. The Capitol Police in Houston, Texas, 2 of them, there to protect me and any person in my environment. I know that there are many other people who want to speak truth to power who may not have the resources I have. And I worry about what can happen in a country where people who think that they're threats can deter other people. I am blessed. I will continue. But I also want to make sure that those persons are apprehended so that people understand that you cannot change policy with intimidation. Everybody's got a right to free speech, but you don't have a right to threaten people. And we want those persons captured. And
Can you tell us, just quickly, can you tell us any news on that front? I mean, has anyone been detained or questioned?
I don't think it judicious at this time to let you know what the investigation has revealed or where it is. I think it's not judicious. You might talk to the Capitol Police. I think it would be appropriate for them to share that kind of information. But I can tell you this, they have indicated to me in intonations that I take seriously that they are serious about this and that they plan to do as much as they can to resolve it and bring persons to justice.
And if I just add, look, this goes with the territory. I haven't been public on this until today, but I'm not gonna be deterred, period.
Yes, sir.
Why are you working separately right now? Why not team up right now and work on the same articles right now?
Well, first, because each member, 435, can bring 1 or more articles at different times. There is no limit on the number of articles any member can bring. I think it's important for us to show to the public that there are members who are looking at the articles of impeachment. And it may very well, but this is something that has just been explored since last Friday, I believe, is when we were contacted. So I think that he and I will continue to talk and we will continue to explore opportunities. But we ought to each reserve the right to move forward when we believe it appropriate. And I don't have an acid test for when the appropriate time will occur, but I do think we need to let the public weigh in. That's my opinion, and I've been waiting.
Let me comment on that. I've been analyzing the law and the Constitution on this for many weeks, months. But I first called Al Green last Friday about working together. So we went from working separately to doing this press conference in just a few days. I look forward to continuing to work closely with my colleague.
I saw a hand over. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I was wondering how the public can weigh in. Is it through protest, through contacting the representative? What would be the best forum for that? And also, I was wondering what you think leadership's role is in this, both for Leader Pelosi and for Speaker Ryan.
Well, let's start with the last part of your question first. It's a question of conscience for all of us, and I don't question the conscience of others. With reference to how can this public weigh in, well, they're weighing in. If you've been looking at the polls, you can see that a plurality of persons are of the opinion that the president should be impeached. There are many who believe that the president fired Mr. Comey for personal reasons to benefit him, not necessarily to benefit the country. So people are weighing in when they're opposed, but there are other things that can be done. Just this weekend, I attended a rally, there was a nationwide rally, calling for an independent commission to investigate this and asking that persons who are found guilty be punished appropriately. So these rallies are taking place. In July, there will be, I believe, a National Impeachment Day. People can have in their own cities impeachment town meetings. We have had city councils to pass resolutions calling for impeachment. There are various ways for the public to weigh in, and the public is finding its way in. But the most important thing for us to remember is that we are representatives of the public. And as the public's will is made known, the will of Congress will be expressed through the will of the people. With this final comment on it, and I will yield to my colleague, I really haven't put in my acid test what the will of the public is in terms of whether that will impact what my thinking is. I plan to let the public weigh in. I think the public has a right to say what they think of what I'm doing. We get many people who differ, but the overwhelming majority of calls that we have received have been in support. And I, as a matter of conscience, will file the articles if I perceive that they haven't been filed by someone else. No rush to be first. And neither does Mr. Sherman have a rush to be first, I might add.
Look, if articles of impeachment based on obstruction of justice were on the floor of the House today, they would not succeed. This is going to be a long process, and certainly it helps when members of the public express their views. We're going to see some important testimony tomorrow that will affect a lot of opinion. We'll see Mr. Mueller's report, and I think that high crimes and misdemeanors have occurred. But if our efforts lead to the removal of this president, that would move us in the direction of the rule of law. If, in order to shore up support with Republican colleagues, the president starts governing in a competent manner, that is not the purpose of what we're doing here today, but it certainly would be a step in the right direction for the country. We'll see how this transpires, but articles of impeachment are not likely to pass until several more acts of this play are played out on the stage.
Yes, sir.
Vote.
We have votes? More votes, okay. I'm sure that we may have missed, so I want to apologize to my constituents now if I've missed a vote. I will, if there are no more questions, I'll make a closing comment. Any additional questions? All right, closing comment, Mr. Sherman, do you want to give yours, and then I'll give mine? Okay.
This is a difficult time for our country. We need governance that is competent and that respects the rule of law. The standard for high crimes and misdemeanors has been met, and I think that will be further confirmed when we hear Comey testify in person tomorrow, and I will be there in person. And it will be a process that will take many months, much action by the people of this country, and additional facts being disclosed to move us in the direction of competent, law-respecting government.
I absolutely believe that this is not one of the better days in the life of our country when we have a president who has obstructed justice. I believe that we do this with heavy hearts. We do this not because we want to, but because we believe we have to. And we do this because we want to make sure that this country is not perceived by other places in the world as a place where the president is above the law. that the president can act with impunity. Every person in this country is beneath the law of this country. The law is something that we all serve under. And the best way to make sure that this president understands and that the people of the country can agree with us is to continue with the effort to impeach. So I will not change my position. I stand on the grounds of impeachment, and I believe that at some point, either I or someone else will present a resolution to impeach the President of the United States, Mr. Donald J. Trump. I thank you for being here, and hope that I will make my votes. Thank you.
I'll be available through my press secretary for any questions. Gotta vote.